Breaking: Nigel Farage just slammed the Prime Minister on the floor of Parliament. And what he said in the next 3 minutes could shatter Keir Starmer's grip on British politics forever. It's 12:14 p.m. Westminster. The House of Commons is packed, shoulder to shoulder, every seat filled, the air thick with tension, cameras rolling, the nation watching, because just 8 days ago, a former ally of Farage, Nathan Gill, Reform UK's ex-leader in Wales, was sentenced to more than 10 years in prison for taking Russian bribes, and today, the Prime Minister stood at the dispatch box and demanded answers. Mr. Farage, Starmer said, his voice sharp, controlled, has a responsibility to investigate his party's links to Russia. The British people deserve the truth. But Farage didn't flinch. He leaned forward. He smiled, and then he hit back. If you want to see exactly what happened. In those next 47 seconds, the words that sent shockwaves through the chamber and triggered a media firestorm across Britain hit subscribe now. Because this is the kind of moment that doesn't just fade. It defines leaders. It exposes agendas. And it changes the direction of a country. Here's what sparked the confrontation no one saw coming. To understand what happened today, you have to go back 8 days. November 21st, 2025, a courtroom in London. Silent except for the judge's voice. Nathan Gill, former member of the European Parliament, former leader of Reform UK in Wales, and once a trusted lieutenant in Nigel Farage's political army, stood in the dock. The verdict: guilty. The charge: accepting bribes from a pro-Kremlin network to spread Russian propaganda across British media and social platforms. The sentence: more than 10 years. It was a political earthquake, because Nathan Gill wasn't just some random operative. He had been at Farage's side during the Brexit wars. He had stood on stages with him, shared platforms, shared strategies. He was, for years, one of the most recognizable faces in the Eurosceptic movement. And now he was a convicted foreign agent. Within hours, the story exploded. Sky News, BBC, The Guardian, every outlet in Britain ran the same headline: Farage LI jailed for Russian influence campaign. Opposition MPs immediately pounced. Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, called it a national security scandal hiding in plain sight. Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey demanded a full public inquiry into Russian interference in British politics. And Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, the man who had spent months trying to project strength, stability, and moral clarity after 14 years of conservative chaos, saw an opening. Because this wasn't just about Nathan Gill, this was about Nigel Farage, the man who had torpedoed the Conservative Party, the man whose Reform UK had won 14 seats in the last election and was now breathing down Labour's neck in the polls, the man who, according to some surveys, was more popular among working-class voters than Starmer himself. And now, Starmer had a weapon. On November 22nd, during a press conference in Downing Street, the Prime Minister made his move. Mr. Farage, he said, looking directly into the camera, has a responsibility not just to his party, but to the British people to launch an immediate, independent investigation into Reform UK's ties to Russia. He paused, let the words hang in the air, because if he doesn't, Starmer continued, the question isn't just about what his former colleagues were doing, it's about what he knew. And when he knew it, it was a direct challenge, a public demand. And it put Farage in an impossible position, because here's the thing. Nigel Farage has always thrived on being the outsider, the rebel, the man who stands against the establishment, against Brussels, against the globalist elite. But now, the establishment was accusing him of being compromised by Moscow, and if he refused to investigate, if he dismissed the allegations, deflected or stayed silent, it would look like he had something to hide. But if he launched an inquiry, it would legitimize the accusations. It would turn his own party into a circus. It would feed the narrative that Reform UK was infiltrated, corrupted, a tool of foreign influence. Either way, Starmer was betting Farage would lose. But Nigel Farage didn't get where he is by playing by other people's rules. On November 25th, just 3 days ago, Farage appeared on GB News, his home turf, friendly cameras, friendly hosts, and he didn't back down. This is nonsense, he said, shaking his head. Complete and utter nonsense. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded, that familiar smirk on his face. Nathan Gill left Reform UK years ago. He hasn't been involved in this party for a long time. And now Keir Starmer wants me to launch some kind of Stalinist inquisition into my own members? Because one man got caught up in something dodgy. He laughed, a dry, bitter laugh. Let me tell you what this really is, Farage said. This is Labour trying to distract from their own failures, from their broken promises, from the fact that they've raised taxes, betrayed workers, and can't control our borders. He pointed at the camera. Keir Starmer is desperate. And this is a witch hunt. The clip went viral. Within 24 hours, it had been viewed more than 6 million times, and the British public was split. Some believed Farage. They saw this as another attempt by the establishment to destroy a man who threatened their power. Others saw a politician dodging accountability, a man who refused to clean his own house because he knew what he might find. But the pressure kept building. The Conservatives, led by Kemi Badenoch, piled on. She called Farage's refusal troubling and said it raised serious questions about Reform UK's judgment and transparency. Even some of Farage's own allies began to waver. Richard Tice, Reform UK's deputy leader, suggested in an interview that perhaps some internal review wouldn't be the worst idea. Farage shut that down immediately. "We don't have the power to investigate ourselves," he said. "We're not a government department. We're a political party, and I'm not going to waste time and money chasing ghosts." But Starmer wasn't letting go, because today, November 29, 2025, was Prime Minister's Questions, and everyone knew what was coming. 12 p.m. sharp, the Speaker of the House rises. Order, order. The chamber falls silent. Prime Minister's Questions is about to begin, and outside Westminster, the entire country is watching. In pubs across Manchester, the BBC feed is on the wall. Construction workers in hard hats, pints in hand, eyes glued to the screen. In coffee shops in Edinburgh, students huddle around laptops. Live streams open. In living rooms from Cornwall to Newcastle, pensioners sit forward in their chairs. Remote controls grip tight, because everyone knows what's about to happen. This isn't just another PM case. This is Starmer versus Farage, and one of them is walking out wounded. Inside the chamber, the atmosphere is electric. MPs on the Labour benches sit rigid, arms crossed, faces tight. They've been briefed. They know the plan. This is their moment to land a blow on Reform UK, the insurgent party that's been peeling away their working-class voters in the north. Across the aisle, the Conservative benches are quieter. Some of them are smirking. They're enjoying this. Watching Labour and Reform tear each other apart is good politics. It splits the opposition. It buys them time. And then there's Nigel Farage, sitting in the third row, surrounded by his 14 Reform UK MPs. He's leaning back, relaxed, one leg crossed over the other, hands folded in his lap, but his jaw is tight, and his eyes never leave Keir Starmer. The Prime Minister stands at the dispatch box, adjusts his papers, clears his throat. He begins with the usual formalities: updates on the economy, a statement on NHS funding, a line about delivering for working people. But everyone knows where this is going, and then he pivots. "Mr. Speaker," Starmer says, his tone shifting, sharper now, colder. "Last week, this country witnessed a grave and troubling development. A senior figure in Reform UK, a former leader of that party in Wales, was convicted and sentenced to more than 10 years in prison for accepting bribes from a Russian intelligence network." Murmurs ripple through the chamber. Starmer doesn't pause. This was not some rogue actor operating in isolation, he continues. This was a man who, for years, held positions of trust and influence within the Eurosceptic movement. A man who worked alongside the leader of Reform UK. A man who shared platforms, shared strategies, and shared a vision for this country's future. He looks directly at Farage now. And yet, when called upon to investigate, when asked to show leadership, to show transparency, to show that his party is not compromised by foreign interests, the honourable member for Clacton has refused. The Labour benches erupt. Disgrace. Someone shouts, "Answer the question." Another yells. The Speaker pounds his gavel. "Order, order." But the energy in the room has shifted. Starmer presses on. "So let me be clear, Mr. Speaker. The British people deserve answers. They deserve to know whether Reform UK has been infiltrated by Russian money, whether its policies, its messaging, its entire political strategy has been shaped by hostile foreign powers." He leans forward, gripping the edges of the dispatch box. "And if the leader of Reform UK will not investigate his own party, if he will not take responsibility, then I ask him directly, in this chamber before the nation, what is he hiding?" The chamber explodes. Labour MPs are on their feet, clapping, shouting, pointing across the aisle. Conservative MPs are leaning forward, some grinning, some stone-faced, waiting to see how this plays out. And Nigel Farage, he's smiling, a slow, deliberate smile, Because he knows what's coming next, the speaker calls for order. It takes 30 seconds to restore calm, and then Farage rises. No notes, no papers, just him and the microphone. Mr. Speaker, he begins, voice steady, measured. I thank the Prime Minister for that performance. Because that's what it was. A performance. Someone on the Labour benches yells, "Coward." Farage doesn't flinch. The Prime Minister stands there. He continues, and talks about transparency, about accountability, about investigating Russian influence in British politics. He pauses, lets the silence build. Well, Mr. Speaker, let me remind the Prime Minister of a few facts. He starts counting on his fingers. Fact number 1. Nathan Gill has not been a member of Reform UK for years. He left the Brexit Party in 2020. He has had no role, no influence, and no connection to this party since then. Fact number 2. The Prime Minister knows this. His advisors know this. And yet he stands there and pretends that a man, convicted of crimes committed years ago long after he severed ties with us, is somehow representative of Reform UK today. His voice rises, now, louder, sharper. And fact number 3. Mr. Speaker, and this is the one that really matters, the Prime Minister wants to talk about foreign influence. He points across the chamber. Let's talk about the Labour Party's funding. Let's talk about the donors who've been linked to authoritarian regimes. Let's talk about the trade deals, the backroom meetings, the cozy relationships with Beijing. Labour MPs are shouting now. Denials, objections, but Farage isn't finished. The Prime Minister demands I investigate my party. Fine, I'll make him a deal. The chamber goes silent. I will launch an investigation into Reform UK's ties to Russia the moment the Prime Minister launches a full, independent inquiry into Labour's financial links to foreign governments. China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, all of it. He leans forward, gripping the bench in front of him. Because if we're going to talk about transparency, Mr. Speaker, let's have full transparency. Not selective outrage, not political theatre, real accountability. The Reform benches erupt in applause. The Conservative benches are nodding, some clapping along, and the Labour benches. Chaos. MPs are shouting over each other. Some are calling for Farage to withdraw his remarks. Others are yelling at the Speaker to restore order. Starmer is still standing at the dispatch box. His face is tight, controlled, but you can see the flash of anger in his eyes, because Farage just flipped the script. He didn't defend himself. He didn't deny anything. He went on the attack. And outside Westminster, the reaction is instant. On social media, the clip is already circulating. Twitter, now X, is flooded with posts. Farage just destroyed Starmer. This is what real leadership looks like. Labour's hypocrisy exposed in 60 seconds. But the other side is just as loud. Farage is deflecting. Classic tactic. He refused to answer the question. What is he hiding? This man is a threat to our democracy. The BBC cuts to its political editor, Laura Kunzberg, standing outside Parliament. What we just witnessed, she says, slightly breathless, was one of the most explosive exchanges in recent parliamentary history. Nigel Farage not only refused to commit to an investigation, he turned the accusation back on the Prime Minister. And the question now is, will this satisfy the public? Or will it make the scrutiny worse? On GB News, the tone is very different. Farage just schooled Starmer, the host says, grinning, absolutely schooled him. And you could see the panic on Labour's faces. On Sky News, the debate is already raging. A political analyst leans forward. Look, Farage is playing a dangerous game here. Yes, he scored points today. But refusing to investigate even if Nathan Gill is no longer in the party leaves a cloud over Reform UK. And clouds don't just disappear, another panelist cuts in. But what's Starmer's endgame? If he pushes this too hard, he looks like he's weaponizing national security for political gain. And that could backfire spectacularly. Back inside Parliament, the session is wrapping up. But the tension hasn't eased. MPs are filing out. But they're not quiet. They're clustered in groups, talking, arguing, pointing. Some Labour MPs look furious. Some Reform MPs look triumphant. And the Conservatives, they're just watching, smiling, letting Labour and Reform destroy each other. Outside on College Green, where journalists interview MPs after big sessions. It's a circus. Reporters are swarming. Reform UK's deputy leader, Richard Tice, is surrounded by cameras. Nigel Farage just showed the country what real backbone looks like. He says, he didn't cower. He didn't apologize for something we didn't do. He stood up and said, if you want transparency, let's have it for everyone. A reporter shouts. But will Reform UK launch an investigation? Tice shakes his head. We don't need to investigate something that doesn't exist. Nathan Gill was gone years ago. This is a smear campaign, and the British public can see right through it. Meanwhile, Labour's shadow Home Secretary is giving his own interview a few feet away. What we saw today, he says, voice tight, was a man who refused to take responsibility. Nigel Farage had the chance to clear the air, to show leadership, to put country before party. And he chose not to. So what happens next? The reporter asks. He pauses, looks directly into the camera. We will not let this go. 3:47 p.m. 2.5 hours after the clash in Parliament, and the story is still accelerating, because what happened inside the chamber was just the beginning. Now, the battle is spilling into the streets, into the newsrooms, into the living rooms of Britain, and Nigel Farage is about to make a move that no one saw coming. At 4:00 p.m. A notification pings across every major newsroom in the country. Urgent. Nigel Farage to make live statement 5:00 p.m. No details. No context. Just a time and a location. Reform UK headquarters in central London. Immediately, the speculation begins. Is he resigning? Is he launching the investigation after all? Is he doubling down? Journalists scramble. Camera crews race across the city. Every major outlet clears its schedule, because whatever Farage is about to say, it's going to be big. By 4:45 p.m., the room is packed, reporters shoulder to shoulder, cameras lined up against the back wall, lights glaring, microphones clustered on the podium like a bouquet of black flowers. And then at exactly 5:00 p.m., Nigel Farage walks in. No aides, no entourage, just him. He steps up to the podium, looks out at the crowd, and for a moment, he says nothing, just lets the silence settle. And then he begins. This afternoon, he says, voice calm, deliberate, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom stood in Parliament and accused me and my party of being compromised by Russia. He pauses, lets that sentence breathe. He didn't present evidence. He didn't offer proof. He simply threw out an accusation and demanded I investigate myself to prove my innocence. A reporter tries to interrupt. Farage raises a hand. Let me finish. The room goes quiet again. Now, I could stand here and defend myself, he continues. I could point out, as I did in the chamber, that Nathan Gill left this party years ago, that he has no connection to Reform UK today, that his crimes, however serious, have nothing to do with us. He leans forward, gripping the edges of the podium. But I'm not going to do that. The room tenses, because this isn't really about Nathan Gill, and it's not really about Russia. He looks directly into the cameras now. This is about silencing opposition. This is about a Labour government that is terrified, absolutely terrified of the fact that Reform UK is rising in the polls, that we're connecting with voters they've abandoned, that we're offering a vision for this country that doesn't involve higher taxes, open borders, and endless apologies for being British. His voice is rising now, louder, angrier. Keir Starmer wants me to investigate my party? Fine, here's my answer. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a piece of paper, unfolds it slowly. This, he says, holding it up, is a letter addressed to the Prime Minister, and in it, I am formally calling on him to release all financial records related to Labour Party donors over the past 10 years. Every name, every amount, every country of origin. Gasps ripple through the room. Because if we're going to talk about foreign influence in British politics, Farage says, voice cutting like a blade, then let's talk about the millions of pounds that have flowed into Labour's coffers from donors with ties to Beijing, to Doha, to Riyadh. He slams the letter down on the podium. Let's talk about the former Labour MPs who now sit on the boards of Chinese state-owned companies. Let's talk about the trade envoys who take consultancy fees from authoritarian regimes. Let's talk about the backroom deals that happen when the cameras are off. A reporter shouts, are you accusing the Prime Minister of corruption? Farage doesn't blink. I'm accusing the Prime Minister of hypocrisy. Another reporter, will you launch an investigation into Reform UK or not? Farage shakes his head. I will not waste time, money, or resources investigating something that doesn't exist. Nathan Gill's crimes are his own. He will serve his sentence. And that is justice. He pauses, looks around the room. But I will tell you this. If the Prime Minister truly believes there is Russian infiltration in British politics, then he should call for a full, independent public inquiry, not into one party, but into all parties. Labour, Conservative, Liberal, Democrat, Reform, all of us. His voice drops now, quieter, but somehow more powerful, because the truth, ladies and gentlemen, is that Keir Starmer doesn't want transparency. He wants a weapon. He wants to smear his political opponents while protecting his own. He leans back, arms folded. And I'm not going to give him that weapon. The room explodes. Reporters are shouting questions over each other. Mr. Farage, are you saying Labour is funded by China? Will you submit this letter to Parliament? Do you have evidence to back up these claims? But Farage doesn't answer. He simply nods once, turns, and walks out of the room, leaving the cameras, leaving the chaos, leaving the nation stunned. Within minutes, the footage is everywhere, every news channel, every website, every social media platform, and the reaction is immediate and ferocious. On Twitter, the hashtag Farage versus Starmer is trending #1 in the UK, thousands of posts flooding in every second. Farage just dropped a bomb. Labour is panicking. This is deflection. Pure and simple. He's hiding something. Finally, someone is calling out Labour's foreign donors. Farage is a puppet, a useful idiot for Moscow. The divide is stark, absolute. There is no middle ground. You're either with Farage or you're against him. In Downing Street, the mood is tense. Aides are huddled around televisions, watching the statement on repeat. One of them turns to a senior advisor. How do we respond to this? The advisor shakes his head. I don't know. If we deny it, we look defensive. If we ignore it, he controls the narrative. Another aide speaks up. We could release a statement, condemn the deflection, reaffirm that Reform UK needs to answer questions about. No, the voice comes from the doorway. Keir Starmer. He walks into the room, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. He looks tired, but his jaw is set. We don't react, he says. Not tonight, Prime Minister. With respect, the advisor says, if we stay silent, Farage wins. He's just accused us of being funded by China. We have to push back. Starmer shakes his head. If we push back now, we're playing his game. He wants us to react. He wants this to become a back and forth, a circus. He sits down, rubbing his temples. We let it breathe for 24 hours. We let the media dissect it. And then we respond, calmly, with facts, with evidence. The room is silent. Someone finally speaks. And what if the evidence doesn't calm things down? What if people believe him? Starmer looks up. Then we have a problem. Meanwhile, across London, in a Reform UK campaign office, the atmosphere is completely different. Champagne bottles are being opened, staffers are cheering, hugging, replaying the press conference on their phones over and over. Richard Tice is on the phone laughing. Mate, that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. You just made Starmer look like a sixth former. But in the corner of the room, Nigel Farage is sitting alone. No champagne. No celebration. Just him, staring at his phone, scrolling through the reactions, because he knows something his team doesn't. This isn't over. Not even close. At 7:23 p.m. A news story breaks. The Guardian, front page. Leaked documents reveal Reform UK donor ties to Russian oligarch. And just like that, the ground shifts again. The article claims that a major donor to Reform UK, a British businessman named Michael Harding, has financial ties to a sanctioned Russian oligarch. The donations, the article says, were made through shell companies, hidden, laundered, designed to avoid scrutiny. The story includes bank records, transaction dates, names, and at the bottom of the article, a quote from a Labour spokesperson. This is exactly why we demanded an investigation. And this is exactly why Nigel Farage refused. Within an hour, the story is everywhere. And the narrative flips. Again. Social media explodes. Farage lied. He knew. This is proof. Reform UK is compromised. Russia owns Farage. Always has. But the other side fights back just as hard. Convenient timing. Labour leaked this. This is a setup. A smear job. Where's the evidence? Labour's donors are clean. At 9:00 p.m., Nigel Farage tweets, just one line. I will be addressing these baseless allegations tomorrow. The truth will come out. And Britain holds its breath, because tomorrow no one knows what happens next. Morning comes slowly. November 30th, 2025. The sky over London is grey, heavy, the kind of grey that presses down on the city like a weight, and Britain wakes up to a country it barely recognizes. In kitchens across the nation, people sit with their tea in their phones, scrolling through the wreckage of the night before. The headlines are relentless. Farage denies Russian donor links but questions remain. The Times Labour demands emergency debate on reform UK funding. BBC News, is British democracy under attack? The Guardian, Starmer's witch hunt. The real scandal. Daily Express were versions of reality. Two completely different stories, and somewhere in the middle, the truth fractured, contested, impossible to hold, because this is what politics has become in 2025. Not a debate, not a discussion, a war. At 8:47 am, Nigel Farage appears on Good Morning Britain, live, unscripted, facing hostile questions. The host leans forward, tablet in hand, expression sharp. Mr. Farage. The Guardian has published documents showing that a major Reform UK donor, Michael Harding, has financial ties to a sanctioned Russian oligarch. How do you explain that? Farage doesn't hesitate. Michael Harding is a British businessman who has donated to several political parties over the years, including the Conservatives. His businesses operate globally, and yes, like many international businessmen, he has had dealings in Russia. That doesn't make him a Russian agent. But the documents, Farage interrupts, were selectively leaked to a newspaper that has been gunning for me for a decade. Convenient timing, don't you think? Hours after I challenged the Prime Minister on Labour's foreign donors, suddenly a leaked story appears. The host presses. So you're saying this is fabricated? I'm saying this is politics. Dirty, cynical politics. And the British people are smart enough to see through it. The interview ends. But the doubt lingers, because even Farage's supporters can't shake the question. What if there's something there? What if, beneath the deflection and the counter-accusations and the theater, there's a real problem? And on the other side, Labour voters are asking the same question about their own party. What if Farage is right? What if Labour does have skeletons in the closet? What if this entire spectacle is just a sides throwing stones from glass houses? The uncertainty is suffocating. By midday, Parliament is in emergency session, not PMCAS. Not a scheduled debate. An emergency session, called by the Speaker after pressure from multiple parties to address matters of national security and political integrity. The chamber is packed again, but the energy is different this time. Yesterday, it was fire, fury, accusation. Today, it's cold, grim, the kind of tension that sits in your chest and doesn't let go. Keir Starmer stands at the dispatch box. No theatrics today. No grand rhetoric. Just facts. Or at least, what he's calling facts. Mr. Speaker, he begins, this government takes the integrity of our democratic institutions seriously. And when evidence emerges credible, documented evidence of potential foreign interference in our political system, we have a duty to act. He pauses, looks around the chamber. Yesterday, The Guardian published documents revealing financial links between a Reform UK donor and a sanctioned Russian oligarch. These are not allegations. These are verified transactions. Bank transfers, shell companies, hidden money. Murmurs ripple through the room. Starmer continues. Now, the leader of Reform UK has dismissed this as a smear, as political theatre. But the British people deserve more than dismissals. They deserve answers. He turns to face Farage directly. And so I ask again, will the honourable member for Clacton agree to an independent investigation into his party's funding? Yes or no? The chamber goes silent, all eyes on Farage. He stands, slowly, deliberately. Mr. Speaker, he says, voice steady. The Prime Minister talks about credible evidence, verified transactions. But he conveniently ignores the fact that Michael Harding's donations were fully declared, fully legal, fully transparent. He pauses, and he also ignores the fact that the same newspaper that published this story has refused to investigate Labour's own donor network. Why? Because it doesn't fit the narrative. His voice hardens. So here's my answer, Prime Minister. I will agree to an independent investigation into Reform UK's funding the moment you agree to the same for Labour. Not just donors. Not just the last 2 years. Everything. Every trade deal. Every consultancy fee. Every overseas meeting. He sits down, and the chamber erupts again. Labour MPs shouting. Reform MPs applauding. Conservative MPs watching, calculating, waiting to see who comes out on top. But no resolution. And no clarity. Just noise. And outside Parliament, the nation is fracturing. In Manchester, a pub argument turns into a shoving match. Police are called. In Bristol, a protest outside Labour headquarters draws hundreds. Signs read, investigate them all and no more lies. In Glasgow, a counter-protest forms. Signs read, Farage equals Putin's puppet and defend democracy. The two groups stand 50 feet apart, shouting across the divide. And no one is listening. Because that's the tragedy of this moment. Not that one side is right and the other is wrong, but that no one trusts anyone anymore. Not the politicians, not the media, not even each other. At 6 o'clock p.m., the sun sets over Westminster. The session has ended. MPs have gone home. The cameras have been turned off. And the building, the seat of British democracy, the place where kings were defied and empires were debated and futures were decided, sits silent in the fading light. Inside, a cleaner pushes a cart down the empty corridor. His footsteps echo. He stops, looks up at the portraits on the wall: Churchill, Thatcher, Gladstone, Disraeli, leaders who governed in times of crisis, who made decisions that shaped the world. And he wonders quietly to himself what they would think of all this, the shouting, the accusations, the endless, exhausting spectacle. He shakes his head and keeps walking, because the building will still be here tomorrow, and the politicians will still come back, and the cycle will start again. But tonight, Britain is tired, tired of the fighting, tired of the uncertainty, tired of not knowing who to believe, because this was supposed to be the beginning of something. A reckoning, a moment of truth, but instead, it's become a mirror, reflecting the fractures, the divisions, the deep, unhealed wounds of a nation that can't agree on what it is anymore. And as the lights go out across Westminster, one question hangs in the air: not whether Nigel Farage will launch an investigation, not whether Keir Starmer will release Labour's donor records, but whether any of it even matters, because the real crisis, the one no one is talking about, isn't about Russia or donors or political scandals. It's about trust, and once that's gone, everything else is just theatre. In a small flat in Birmingham, a woman turns off the television. She's watched the news all day, read the articles, followed the debates, and she still doesn't know what to believe. Who's telling the truth? She asks her husband, sitting across the room. He shrugs. Does it matter anymore? She doesn't answer, just sits in the silence. And outside, the rain begins to fall.